Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Tom Munz. I'm the executive director for Idaho Ripple Effect, and I'm joined today by Michael Law. He's the director of Idaho Ripple Effect as well, so I really appreciate his support. The interview that I have with him today is designed to be part of the series of Meet the Board, so that you can understand a little bit about the people that are involved in the organization. And not only that, but to be able to give a background of where they came from, what they do now, um, what they plan on doing in the future, maybe, but and maybe some feelings and thoughts they have on certain issues. Um, and first and foremost, or most importantly, to address the question that I get most often is how is it that we were to get involved? How is it that I get involved? How is it that other people get involved to make a difference? And I think what you'll find when you start watching the videos is you'll find out we all have several common threads, and that is that we just decided that we weren't going to sit on the couch anymore. So, Michael, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, I guess I just I wanted to start with and just let you kind of run with it. It's just to kind of give everybody your story, maybe where you came from, um, you know, uh, what you've done in your life, how you got to this point now, how you got involved. What got you engaged in the things that you're doing now and involved in, testifying and doing some of that stuff. So if you could kind of start at the beginning, that would be awesome.
Okay. Well, uh, been around. I grew up here in Idaho, born and raised here in Idaho. So I'm one of those natives,
One of
and
the
I
few.
don't. And I'm not one to. I mean, I tend to be more libertarian in my way of thinking. So if somebody's coming from out of town, so be it. I don't care. I don't care where they're from. What I care about is principles. I don't care who people are. It's the principles that matter. Well, I shouldn't say I don't care about the people because I tend to lean the way George Washington was, and that's how I vote as well. Is first I look at their character. So are they of good character? Are they honest? Are they just a good person? Are they wise? And by wise, I mean especially when we're talking about government itself and them, somebody getting involved with government, are they wise? Meaning, do they know the Constitution and do they follow it? It has to be both. You can have knowledge about the Constitution and then make wrong choices. Wisdom is have knowledge and make correct choices.
Mm.
Uh, and and the principles come along right alongside with it. So that's kind of where I come from. So I don't care whether you're from California or New York or Florida, Idaho, even. And there's plenty of Idahans that just suck. If you to
Yeah,
put it
don't hold back,
mildly,
will you?
I'm not gonna. I'll leave out names. I'll just say,
Wait, if I wear a
different
cowboy hat,
areas.
I'm okay.
Ooh, are you trying to point names?
I know, right? Sorry.
Um, So I spent a couple of years in Japan. My wife is Japanese, but became a citizen 12 years ago. And her first vote for president was actually Trump's first administration. So that was hers, and but she took a while before she decided she wanted to become a citizen. But she has. Um, I spent a couple of years in Florida actually as a Japanese tour guide. Um, Disney World, Universal Studios. That was fun in some ways because you got paid to play. I mean, going to Disney World every day, or to Universal Studios, or even to Kennedy Space Center. Those were phenomenal.
So you
Watching some
speak
of the
Japanese
launches.
too?
I do speak some Japanese. In fact, currently I am a project manager for an online translation service. I don't actually do any of the translating because it's all written,
Uh,
and that's a little bit different story than speaking, especially when it comes to Japanese. Although for my part, we deal with I'm over the Far East language department, so it's Japanese, Korean, Chinese, although
Wow.
probably 95+% is Japanese.
Wow.
And I just manage the translations that need to be done. Who's going to translate? Who's going to proof everything, edit everything, and it's um, uh, really can be interesting and challenging at times, especially if we get plenty of business, which it kind of there's kind of an ebb and flow to it. Um, we can go a while without much, and we can be just super busy at times. So, but it's it tends to be pretty balanced.
I bet your wife keeps you on your toes, huh?
Yeah, she can a little bit because I do have to know some a
That's not
little
how you
bit,
say
right?
it.
But yeah, I don't definitely have that issue. More recently, I discovered some because I really like the old samurai TV shows that Japan used to, and they still do, but they really popular a while ago, quite a while ago. And I just discovered where I can find it streaming online. So I've been kind of getting back in that, and it's been fun.
I used to watch those in Hawaii in the 70s.
Wow.
So,
Well,
yeah.
the one that I'm particularly watching, it started in mid 70s. So
Yeah.
anyway, so after a couple of years in Florida, and this was late 90s, uh, Japanese economy was not doing really well, and so we weren't getting as many tourists, and it's like it's getting really hard because uh, to make ends meet because part of it was based on sales, part of my salary. And so it's like if they're not coming and I'm not selling, then it makes it that much harder. So we decided to move back home which is here. Family is from here. We have what people like to say 4 or 5 generations Idahoan. Um, that that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything to me.
Nor should it.
I have some great ancestors, but it means nothing. I don't get to ride on their coattails. I have to make a name for myself, so to speak. I mean, I have to do things myself.
Mhm.
After coming back here, decided, I need to seeing a lot of issues in education and not being properly taught American values, the principles of the Declaration, which and the Constitution, which I was always interested in, um, but hadn't really dived deep into anything. I decided, if I think education needs somebody who's going to teach those correct principles, teach the uh, how great America really is. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to dive into it. I'm also going to learn to be a teacher. That's what I intended to do. And I actually had a teaching certificate certified in political science, U.S. history, and government
Wow.
for the first 6 years. I think they're 4 years or 6 years, something like that. But my problem after getting the degree and getting certified is getting people um, to hire. Um, and having, I was already a little bit involved as a precinct committeeman with the Republican Party. You put that target on your back, and they don't. Education system doesn't really like to hire those types of people. Um, and so um, between bachelor's and master's degree, which I got out of, it was completely online out of American Public University, which a lot of military actually will go to. A lot of military personnel, especially since it's online, they can do it from anywhere in the world. And my focus was on, of course, American history and American government and how that sort of thing worked. But through my education, I found and discovered that there was not a whole lot that we do. And it initially started with the Declaration of Independence. We don't talk about it that much. When we do talk about it, when education does talk about it, even in college, they talk about uh, life, liberty, and property, maybe a little bit. all men are created equal, and they run with that. And they don't dive into anything else. And the other thing that they will say is, oh, the whole uh, taxation without representation. That's about the gist of what you get in Declaration of Independence. I'm like, there's so much more to that. And so I decided myself to dive into that. And somebody's got to, that's usually what happens with an author. Somebody to decide they want to write a book is because they see a need for it. Usually more so with nonfiction than with fiction, but nonfiction are like there's something missing there, and so they have to write. They feel compelled to write, which is kind of what happened to me. But it didn't. The thing is, it didn't end with just the Declaration. It just kept going into the Constitution, into the all the amendments and so on. But was able to get published my book. Probably can't see it very well.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, wait, do that again. Go up a little. No, okay, go slow, back out. Let's see. No, it's too
if
flat.
it'll,
Put it in front of your face. There you go. You can raise it up a little bit. The Founders Revolution, Michael Eslaw. Okay, good.
yeah, the forgotten history and principles of the Declaration of Independence. I say forgotten because some people either never really
Knew it.
paid much attention to it, they never learned it, it was never taught, as well as the principles. And there are definite principles that they really just don't, that are not really ever taught. So what I did with that and how I approached that was I wanted to know those that wrote it, which is just Thomas Jefferson, but there were, others were involved in the committee, but it was really just Thomas Jefferson. I wanted to know what they thought. And especially since I was going into history, I wanted to understand why they would throw in, because there's 27 charges that Thomas Jefferson lays charges the king with violating the rights of the colonies, the rights of the individual citizens. And I wanted to find out why. Why was that included? What were they doing to violate that? And as I did that, it's like, well, yeah, these are huge. Like forcing, if they were on the high seas, for example, and fighting against the British, and they lost their ship, got captured, they would force them to fight against their brethren. So they're colonists, they're captured, but they forcibly put them into their navy and force them to fight against their fellow Americans, their fellow citizens. Like that was just dastardly.
Wow. I didn't
Things
know.
like
I
that.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's one of the charges is forcing us to fight against our brethren. It's like, come on. But and one of the minor charges is actually taxation without representation.
Mm.
But so one of the other things that I did in my book is I found it, and it partly comes from the training as a historian, as somebody who is supposed to teach history to high school students in particular. Most high school students are like, who gives a flying crap about this? I
Mm.
mean, how does that apply to me? I mean,
Mm.
this is history. That's in the past. Who cares?
Yeah.
Well, to make it relevant, you have to apply those ideas, that history to today. So on top of going through the history of each of those charges, for example, I also point to how government is doing similar things today, such as erecting a multitude of offices and sending hither swarms of officers to eat out our substance and to harass our citizens. That's one of my favorite charges because you can find that everywhere. I mean, and one of the things that I pointed to was, look, there are 500, and I just pointed at the federal government, not looking at the state government, just pointed at the federal government. Uh, there were over 500 departments in which government can eat out our substance and harass our citizens. And I gave that example. I give examples of when we have good, solid laws that ought to be allowed, um, but federal government cancels it through the judiciary or however they may decide to do it. It's just violating our own constitutions in Idaho and our own good laws that we need for our people to be safe and protected, because that is the whole purpose of government, is to protect life, liberty, and property. And when that's not happening, then government is usually uh, in a lot of ways involved in trampling those rights themselves, but preventing others from trampling as well. And that is not where we need to go. And anyway, so because I saw that or that lack of teaching, that's why I got involved in writing the book. Um, and I've been and also recognizing that it is necessary for us to be involved locally, especially because that's where most of the damage is occurring to us individually. The federal government, yeah, but they do, but it's not on a daily basis compared to what state and local government will do.
Right.
And that's why I got involved there. I got involved, kept hearing people like, yeah, we need to get involved here and here at the local level, and nobody really doing it. It's like, you know what, I'm going to do it. So that's why I had ran for a school board here in Cuna, and was successful at beating the incumbent by a whopping few votes, but it was like 26 votes to 35 votes or something like that. And because I applied those principles, which I really believed, which is we're taxing too much, we need to have more accountability in government, we need to be teaching certain things, we have too much excess. And I was voting against levies and things like that. They decided to run a recall on me.
They
So,
did.
so in four
You don't touch
years,
the sacred cow.
yeah. So in 4 years of uh, in a 4 year term, uh, I had to be voted for twice. Well, few people can say that. I had to be voted
Wow.
into office twice. Once
Wow.
because of the recall, but the recall was really amazing to me, because what I was doing is like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in trouble here. Looks like because we're talking about education, but they came back and decided to keep me at 70+% on the recall. It's like, yeah, we want this guy. We finally have somebody who's actually talking and walking the walk and listening to their constituents, which is what the constituents want, was more government accountability, less waste, and that's what I was after.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a fun few years there.
Wow. So you could probably go off all day long on this whole Doge thing with with them shutting down departments and all that. And I think part of
I wouldn't need a Doge. I just like, everybody's fired. You
I,
go
I
home.
that's what I do too. That's what I do too, for sure. So so you just to recap this thing. So um and I wanted to go back to this. You came from Idaho. Did you come from Cuna?
Well, born in Boise, but yeah, my parents moved out to Cuna probably when I was 3, 4 years old, and was there. Well, they're still even in the same house, so
Wow.
um, yeah,
So
there's ever since.
you've seen a lot change then. I remember that was just a 2-lane road.
Well, yeah, yeah. Right now, kids are graduating with a higher number of students in the graduating class than what I had in my whole high school, 4 years, 4 years of classes. So,
Yeah, I haven't even been down there in a couple of years. It just yeah, it was interesting when they decided to do I remember when they did the expansion down there and stuff too. So you were in Cuna and then you ended up traveling and then you ended up coming home. Um, when you talk about the importance of the principles and talking about reading the book, where do you think you got bit by that bug? I mean, when did you realize that there was really this need to do what you felt like needed to be done? Because there's usually, I think what we're talking about off the air is there's a moment where you just go along doing your life and then all of a sudden there's this like, "Er." And then you have this redirect. Where was that for you, do you think?
I would say it's actually in the education itself. Um, so seeing the need, and that's what caused me to start looking deeper into, you know, into the Declaration and into that history and so forth. As far as actual activism or getting really active, I mean, I was active before, but I was just kind of one of those PCs that would just show up and yeah, whatever. Not not anything great or not really wanting to do anything necessarily, but just found it important to be civilly engaged. But it wasn't much of an engagement. What really kicked it in for me, I think, was what my time on the school board. I decided, everybody's talking, nobody's walking the walk, so I'm going to walk the walk, and that's why I decided to get on the board. But as I watched the nonsense on the board and how they thought and the things that they did, including making promises like when I voted no on putting a levy on, and then we were able to knock it down, they were they were actually surprised because I was able to get some funding to put out some flyers and tell people, hey, this is what's happening. They don't actually need the money. And so it went down in flames, and that's when they decided to do the recall. But they had promised certain things that they would do if they got the levy, and they promised we're going to look into other things and see what we can do to cut and be more efficient. And
Uh-huh.
after months and months of talking about it, they're like, you know what, we're done. We're done talking about this. We're just repeating over and over, like we haven't done anything. It's like, you just ticked me off. And
Well, you
it ticked me off enough um, that decided I'm going to spend some time down at the state house and force their hand in a lot of ways. So one example, and there's no way I can point to my involvement in it other than just what I'm saying, which is there's a bill that prohibits individuals, the school boards, any government entity from using taxpayer funds to advocate for more taxpayer funds, and they can actually be fined. So I wanted people to have jail time, but they're like, they're not going to really go for that. So let's just stick with fines. Yeah, that's too much. It's like, look, they're taking taxpayer funds, because
stealing.
in,
Yeah.
in, in, in fighting against the levy, it's like I'm fighting against all that money that the school district has. It's like,
Mhm.
that's ridiculous. I shouldn't have to fight my own money to
Did they
to stop it.
did they think that because in your position is a lot like mine, or I should say my position's a lot like yours, um, where I think people are generally intrigued when you're not focusing on Republicanism, right? And you're not making it about the Democrats, you're not making it about the Republicans. You're just coming in from a position of principle. So, do you feel like that made it easier for you to convey the message that you had when people were listening to you, or do you think it made it more difficult?
No, I think it's more difficult if you're not principled.
Yeah,
Because if you don't have principles to stand by, you can be blown about by every wind of doctrine.
yeah,
That's that's the saying. You can be blown about by every wind of doctrine if you're not in that kind of a position of sticking with your principles.
yeah.
And because of that, because look, I had these principles, this is what I believe, this is what I'm going with, and that doesn't ever change. It makes it easier to not have to try to remember what did I say to so and so? What did I say to so and so? Because because it's a different audience, so you got to talk differently. And sometimes that rubs people wrong, but I don't care.
Did you think that you do you think you were received better because you were more about principle than you were about politics
I
by other?
think I think even opponents tend to respect that.
I think so too.
Even if they oppose you, they know where you stand. In fact, I had one gentleman who, not in my district, not in my area, but he's like, I don't like where you stand, but because you are trustworthy, you will do what you say,
Mhm.
I would vote for you just on that.
Yeah.
Even though I don't like the principles, I don't like your policies, I don't necessarily like where you're going, but I find that I can vote for somebody like that over somebody who might change his position here and there. It's like I can't trust that that person will do what he says, and I'd rather have somebody that I can trust, even if it's the wrong thing, than somebody who I can't trust who might do the wrong thing, uh, just at a whim, but also might do the right thing. And he's like, I don't want. He just said, I don't want somebody who flip flops, goes back and forth. I prefer somebody with character or honesty over somebody who's not.
And that's, I think, why I'm excited about this idea of this organization is that, it's about providing information to people and hoping that if you give them the right information, they can make the right decisions, right? So I've had people that disagree with me and disagree with my politics, and once they're done calling me all these different names and they recognize that some of the things I'm actually advocating for are for the betterment of all people, regardless of party, they're really not really sure where to stand because,
Yeah.
finding people with principles seem to be rare. I mean, imagine if our legislators um, knew what you just said. You could swing the opposition in your direction if you would just say what you mean and mean what you say.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And just explain what the detriment is to people, regardless of what your political affiliation is, right?
Yeah. And I think that is why I lean on Washington as much as I do, as far as that idea with regards to government is exactly what he said. I first look at their character. Are they good, wise, honest people? Would the community look at him and go, yeah, he's a decent person, regardless of whether his policies are? And then he moves after that. It's like, well, what's their affinity towards the Constitution?
Mhm.
So first was character, because really, and I can give you, one example that I found in history, during the founding era was, you had Paul Revere and you had John Hancock, and you had all them on their committee in Boston. And there was one guy who was kind of a double agent person. Um, he was handing off information to the British, which they didn't know, but they found out after the war really started, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense, because he was committing adultery, he was doing kind of some of this, and they were actually overlooking that.
Mhm.
They're like, yeah, he's messing around with this other woman, but he's a patriot,
Mhm.
or so they thought. But
Right.
because his character, when somebody's character is not is not good, it's easy to manipulate them, easy to blackmail them, easy to get them to do what you want in some way, shape, or form. But if they're solid, honest, good individuals, you can't do that to them.
Yeah. 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 That's good. That's really good. I think about all the stuff, and I'm like, God, it'd be so great if people would just care enough to want to know more about what you knew. And I'm I got plans for you, man. You don't know what they are yet. I just think you're awesome. I mean, every time I have a question about something, I can go, "Hey, am I right about this? Am I right on this?" So we've had some really good conversations, and
Yeah, and if you remember, like several years ago when we had what was that, HJR 5 or something like that,
uh-huh.
about the review on the legislative review on rules that the executive is making.
Yeah,
Like I brought you back to John Locke and was like, no, we don't need legislative review. We just need legislators who are not creating new legislators, as John Locke says. They don't have the power to create new legislators. And if they were doing their job and making all the rules like they are supposed to, then we don't have any need for a review.
I've often thought it would be really fun to be able to have you and I on with Wayne Hoffman and go, so, and we've titled the video HJR 5 Revisited and say, Wayne, I know that you were really, really supporting this thing. And no offense to Wayne, I love him.
Yeah.
And just to have some fun with it and say, so what have we done with that? It was very, very important for them to push it. And of course, you and I think we're the only ones that opposed it
Yeah,
on
probably.
principle, right? And it would be interesting to be able to see what they've done with that, because I'll bet, and maybe I'm speaking this out of ignorance, but I'll bet nothing's happened with it. It was just a random piece of legislation that got passed, and that was it.
They do here and there because I mean, right at the beginning of the year is when they really do all the reviews of the rules, but I think they just let them go for the most part. I mean, here and there, I think I've seen where they like, no, you need to revisit that rule, make it better, whatever. It's like, no, why don't you do it, legislature? That's your job is to make the rules, to make the laws. But
But they were doing
whenever,
that with they were doing that without the resolution, right?
oh
I mean,
yeah,
they had the ability. So the point for me, of course, I like to poke, finger in
there,
people's eye, whatever. It's like, okay, so what has this piece of legislation done that we weren't already doing already? Now, whether we actually, went through the administrative rules every time or not is not the question. The question is is it something that they do, and um, did we need a resolution to do it? And
yeah,
so, if people are going to be doing this push for these major pushes for like Prop 1 or, HJR 5 or, whatever they're going to do, it's like, if you're going to go through the process of wasting taxpayer money on supporting something, let's at least make sure that something that it's implemented, I guess, or
yeah,
that
fully
people
implemented.
are utilizing what's been passed, or it would make something completely irrelevant. It's like, I used to get really frustrated when people would make laws that were unenforceable. It's like,
Right.
why would you create a law
Or
that's unenforceable? I mean,
or
it's
my
just this is
or my favorite when they make a law with no punishment.
yeah.
It's like, oh yay, you made a law. You can't do this anymore. But what are you going to do about it if they don't? It's like
Yeah.
if there's no punishment, it makes no sense. I mean,
Yeah.
it has to be enforced. It's like, stop doing that. What are you going to do about it? Oh yeah,
Well, I
you
think
can't fine me. You can't throw me in jail. I mean, it does no good.
well, and then I'm thinking maybe a lot of that is, we deal with a lot of ego, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what, you and I don't look at, I would say that you and I, generally speaking, don't look at people through party. You just got through telling me that you believe in people's consistency and their worldview and
Yeah,
their understanding of, their moral compass, if you will. And that it, it wouldn't mean whatever party is. And so when people focus on things like that, there's a lot of ego involved. There's a lot of like, hey, I'm going to create a law, just so I can, be in the history books in Idaho for,
yeah,
this
yeah,
guy created a law. Look, I don't care. I'll say no all day long. I don't care if I ever create a law, because somebody's got to stop this train, because we just have way too much on the books already.
yeah.
Wow.
For
Wow.
sure. And continuing just to tad on that, I thought, if I'm ever a legislator, the first thing I'm going to do whenever somebody brings in rules from the bureaucracy is like, you need to approve the rules. It's like, you know where I'm going to stand? I'm going to vote no on everything
Yeah.
because we're the rule makers, not you. You're the executive branch. Uh, you don't get to make the rules. And so I don't care how great the rule is. I'm voting no. I mean, that's
I think we should visit from time to time. I just wish people would follow it, but and maybe they will, but time to time just check in and go, "Hey, so, and talk about some of the questions that we've done just between you and I, because I think people need to understand what's happening. For example, this thing with Doge, right? Or this thing where people are making fun of Elon Musk, or, people are questioning, even I honestly was questioning whether Trump actually had the constitutional authority to write all of these executive orders, which I'm very fearful of, because all we need is a president to go the other way and they can rescind all the executive orders and
just
all the
like Trump is doing.
right. And so it isn't to say that the things that Trump is doing aren't necessary, right, to reduce
Right,
government waste, and
right.
especially this expose on USAID, man. I can't even believe. I mean, I can, but I didn't think I'd ever see them going after it in my lifetime. But I think it's important to talk about it. I was talking in an interview with Ron, actually, And he was saying, well, and I was questioning the constitutional authority of the executive branch, and he said, you got to remember though, that the Constitution he gave whatever whatever provision it was, I forgot, but to execute the laws, the laws of the land and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, okay, all right, I can see that. I mean, if he sees that something is unconstitutional, then perhaps he's got some play in that. But if Congress is the one that's writing laws, then Congress should be the one that rescinds them, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
maybe.
you know, a great example, and I can't remember. Want to say it's uh, Grover Cleveland, but I don't think it is. President some time ago that didn't want to go to war. And this was just before the Spanish American War. He didn't want to go to war, and Congress was like, "We're gonna fund the troops. We're going to declare war. We're gonna go." And he's
Wow.
like, "Go ahead. Doesn't mean I have to ship off my sailors. Doesn't mean I have to ship off my men.
Oh,
I'm
because
the
he has to
commander in
actually.
chief. I'm the commander in chief. You can declare war. You can allocate the funds. Doesn't
Yeah,
mean I have to wage war."
right,
I was like, that's a really good point. So Congress can fund all that they want. Doesn't mean he has to spend it.
right. That's a good
Doesn't
point.
mean it's his job to execute those laws, and he doesn't necessarily have to spend it. I mean, he in some ways he should because that's what the law says. But if he himself, especially if he vetoes it, which usually doesn't happen on spending and things like that, but he should be able to go, no, not constitutional. We're not doing that.
Well, the courts can, if the executive branch can do it. I mean, if the courts are doing it, the
Yeah, the
executive
courts
branch can
are
do it,
doing it.
right?
The
So, I
courts are
mean,
doing it.
we do have three branches of government, and they're all supposed to be a check on each other. So, it sounds like it would be fine. I mean, So I'm not sure how long we've been on, but and I don't want to take up all your time, but so where do you plan on going from here? So you wrote the Founders Revolution book, right?
Yep.
And that took you, when did you start writing that?
Oh, gee, like 2014.
Really? And it took you how long?
Pro- Actually, probably. Well, so I was kind of off and on during that time. Actually, I think it was 2011. I don't remember exactly, but it was kind of off and on. And then I think it was 2014 that I'm like, I really got to get down and finish this.
Mhm.
So that's when I knuckled down in about a year. In about a year, I finished it up. And actually, the book is actually three parts. It's part one of three that I had written and finished that up, sent it off to try to get it published, talking to agents, and they were just all like, "This is way too long." So then I decided to break it up in several parts, and had to make a lot of changes to part one, and then tried it again, and somebody bit and
Good,
decided to take it on. And so
good,
2018 is when it got published. It was contracted the end of 2016, I think, but it took about a year or so to get it to really get it going. For them to put it on the schedule to publish, for us to do the covers and make sure that the editing was done. It takes a little bit of time. The interesting thing, real quick on that, is the editor that I chose to use. He was a college professor that taught U.S. history,
uh,
and I had
wow,
him. I said, "Yeah, I, the point is to edit it, make sure there's punctuation and spelling and everything is correct." Um, which we didn't have a lot to do because I'm kind of a grammar Nazi myself.
mm.
But I
Wish
mean,
I
we still
was.
had some, and he's like, "Yeah, let's change the tone of this just a little bit here and there." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, we can do that." But when he got done, he's like, "I never do this. I don't ever recommend or write a recommendation or anything to any books that I have edited, but I have to for you because." Which you can find it actually his statement on Amazon.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
he's like, I taught U.S. history in college, And I learned some things
Wow.
in the book that I did not know. And he's like, if I learn something, what is it going to say to to other people? And that's really kind of what my point was, is we've just forgotten that history. We've
Yeah.
forgotten those principles, and that's why I had written that. So yeah, it's just
Do you think
what I did there.
is he going to be publishing your other ones too?
I don't, I really don't know. And I found that publishing a book is really expensive
Mhm.
because most publishers, almost all publishers, require you to purchase so many books yourself.
Mhm.
Um, and then most, unless you're a bestseller, they don't put much money into it,
I see.
into advertising or anything like that. And that's something that I discovered in doing this. But at least the publisher that I had worked more as a partner than as we got your book, we're in charge, we'll decide how we're going to do this. They don't do it that way. So it was
Wow.
a good publisher on that side.
So what can the people expect from you now that your first book's done? Are you're writing another one? You got
Like I said, I finished actually the three
another?
parts, but I have plenty of editing to do on those other ones. In the meantime, I've done some other things. Like I actually took this book, thought, just try it and see if I could write a children's version of it. Keep it simple because I
Right.
think it's important for children to be able to understand. And so I did it that hasn't been published. And part of that, even though it's a lot shorter and you would think it would be easier, the drawings you typically have to have drawings, art,
Pictures.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
pictures. And that's really expensive too. It's like, oh geez, everything is so expensive and and most of it has to come out of the author's pocket. So it's like, I don't know if I can do that yet. So I mean, I just gotta get to that point. And maybe I can use your grant writer to help me get grants so I can do that.
You could actually. She's yeah, Kaylee York. She's for hire actually. So just be nice to her because tell her tell her I sent you. But yeah, I can connect you with her for sure, or you can connect her with yourself or whatever. So what's the so uh what are these other books? You have titles for these yet?
Um, so the second part is actually on the Constitution itself, as originally written. So through the end of the articles before any of the amendments.
Hmm.
And in that, I doing the same thing that I did in the first one, which is from the founders' point of view, from those that wrote it, from the convention itself, from the Federalist Papers, even from the Anti-Federalist Papers, because you got to put in the other side too. Um, which the biggest shocker when I was going through that was on the Electoral College, which Democrats and others were like, we need to get rid of that. It's so dumb. It's like, but that was one of the few things that both the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists agreed on.
Hmm.
I was like, so those that liked the Constitution, those that hated it, that's the one thing they could agree on was the Electoral College. But it's not done in the way that they kind of expected even today. But which was basically, and if you look, even when we go in to vote for Trump or whoever, we can see who the electors are underneath, and that's really who we're voting for.
Hmm.
But the way they had envisioned it was autonomous, that they could actually not be pledged to, say, Trump or to Biden or whomever.
Hmm.
They could decide. So basically, we had to come to know who those electors were. A little bit different way of thinking, but that was one of the most interesting things that I had discovered in that was that both the anti-federalists and the federalists were on board with the electoral college.
Wow. Well, I think, well, a lot of it is just people have their own idea about, when I was talking with people that know less than we do about the Constitution, a lot of people would just say, well, our government's really corrupt right now. So therefore, I think COS uses this in their talking points is that the government now is so corrupt that, we just need to replace it. Well,
No,
whatever happened to the fact that the reason why it's corrupt is because it's nothing that our founding fathers had ever designed by the original creation of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution itself,
right,
right?
right.
So
The system, what they wrote is not corrupt. It's the people who are running it that are corrupt.
well, didn't they say that we get the government that we deserve? I mean,
Yeah, that
though you can't
we
be
tend
ignorant and
to.
free, or if you want to be
Yeah,
ignorant and free, you'll have what'll never be, or
yeah.
whatever it is.
So
It's like, hello.
I think to answer your question is on the title of it, which was the actual title of the whole thing, in all three parts, was the what did I have it as? It's been so long since I've actually really looked at it because I've been busy with some other things. I can pull that up real quick. Maybe not.
That's all right. But if when you have your books released, they'll be all available on the same website that you have?
Yeah, yeah. So the thing with my current website is it's not just limited to the book and some reviews and stuff like that. I have uh several other articles that are also on it.
Okay.
For example, um 2020 before COVID started really here, I actually uh, had a couple of different articles. One, I took the Thomas Paine's American Crisis,
Mhm.
his first chapter, and rewrote it to match today.
Wow.
And basically, so I used that, and then I also pointed to the fact that I think when we look back on things, uh, what's going on with COVID and how government is going to be using its power and authority, we'll look back on it and we'll be like, what in the heck were we all thinking?
Yeah.
And boy, has that come true. More recently, one that I wrote was called, it was a kind of I took a big chance, I think, on it, was called, What is a Conservative?
You know, that's a really good topic. I
Uh,
wrote about that on my website about are conservatives really neocons? And are neocons Americans or are they?
I don't know if you've read it, but yeah, I kind of took a huge chance on that. But I think some of the comments that I've seen, uh, even on other websites that republished, they're like, it's a little bit long, but man, that's a lot of food for thought there. Because really, what is a conservative? It's in a lot of ways it's hard to nail down to. Because today's idea of a conservative is like nobody really knows.
Did you see what Phil McGrain wrote in he when he sent out his last press release or his email? He said he's something about he's happy to tell to let everybody know that everybody's trying to dispel this idea that people are frustrated that Californians are moving here, and of course Californians are probably frustrated that people don't like them. And so Phil McGrain came out and said, well, we really need to dispel all of these, and I'm paraphrasing that, just because people are coming here from California doesn't mean that they're, Californians. It means that they're, most of them that are moving here are Republicans. And I said, there you have it.
Yeah, yeah,
The ignorant electorate now is, under the banner of republicanism is going to take us down this path that we don't need to go down because most of the people that left there, I think it's fairly safe to say, know a lot less than we do. And what's worse than that, and that I've figured out, is they're involved in the same kinds of things that I was involved when I first got involved. Or they're not involved at all. So they might be, oh, well, I'm a Republican PC, or I'm a this and I'm a that. And I'm like, okay. So I was asking people two basic questions. And one of them was, when you decided that you wanted to join the GOP, what did you hope to gain from that? They're like, Tom, that's a really good question. I said, well, I've got a better question, and that is, what have you gained after that? And they're like, I just don't know. And I'm like, maybe you should rethink the amount of time that you're spending in something and think about the return on your investment that you'd hope to achieve by
yeah.
spending so much time doing it. So, and then down the rabbit hole we go. But anyway, we're gonna close up here. So, Michael, I really appreciate you jumping on with me and stuff. I'm really hoping that people will watch this and people will be inspired to not only read your book, but maybe even, you know, to get you out and start talking about what you're passionate about. You're obviously good at it. There's obviously few people that know what you know, and so it makes you important. It makes you important to me. It makes you important, I think, to the state, if they were just to understand the importance of what they've been giving up while they fight for republicanism, in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, we have to remember, most importantly, which we've talked about throughout, is how important those principles are. Well, George Washington said, and which is the title of the book as I originally had it, was The Standard of Liberty.
Wow.
The Constitution is the standard of liberty.
Mhm.
And if we don't stay focused on that, if we don't stay focused on those principles, on those ideas, on those concepts, and understand it, that's where we go wrong. And I'm one to always continue learning. For example, just real quickly, the other day I was thinking, because they're always talking about how the states set up formed the federal government.
Mhm.
No, it dawned on me that that was not the case. Because if you look
What?
at, yeah, yeah, I'm throwing this at you. If you look at each of the states and who was it that was ratifying the Constitution in each of the individual states? Was it the states? No, it
No.
was a convention in the states, uh, in the several states. They did it by convention. So all the people were getting together. Yeah, they sent delegates, but it was not the state government itself. It was the individuals who came together in a convention. You can think of it as a huge caucus in a way.
Mhm.
So it was really the people, as it states in the preamble, we the people do ordain this government. And if you look at the way that it was ratified, it was not done by state governments, it was done by convention in the several states. So basically, a huge convention of people getting together, arguing and talking about it and ratifying it. So and I don't know why it never dawned on me that way, but yeah, it's like it was not done by the states. The
That's
states did not create the federal government, it was the people.
that's interesting. So it forces me to ask another question. Maybe it's a good time to quit and do it and find another one. But what with Ron's deal with the federal lands and stuff, what I started to learn there was, during the land disposal program, the federal government that had taken ownership of or had ownership of that land, their job in the disposal program wasn't to give it to states. It was to give it to people. So I
Right,
feel like what you're saying is true, because some of these states were not even created yet. They were
right.
they had to have 1,500 males. They had to have They had to be property owners. They had to have all of these different things. Then they could apply for statehood and all that. So I think there's that is part of that, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable, man.
And
Well,
disposing, yeah, there's plenty on disposing. It's like
I just get so
just
excited.
even little words that they threw in there is like, oh, I got to think about that word. It's like, what does that actually mean? I mean, it's those things are important. And little things, we the people did ordain and establish it. So, it's one of the most important things that I think we tend to forget is if I can't do something as an individual, I can't have government do it on my behalf.
Right.
So, yeah, I
Right.
can't have government, I can't come over to your house and I see some books that maybe I might like to have or whatever. I can't come and grab them, and therefore I can't have government do it either.
Right.
It's
That's right.
just simple things. But yeah, that was a newer one that dawned on me as like it wasn't the states that formed the federal government; it was the people.
Maybe we could do this again, or maybe we could do it regularly or something. I was doing a series with Ron for a while
Right.
to go through his book, and I thought, how fun would it be to be able to just like either take the latest tidbit, or to do a series or something like that and help people understand it. I think, for me, one of the biggest problems that I had, even now, is to understand the separation of powers between the states and the federal government, and not that I don't understand that, but more specifically related to how the constitutions work. How does the
Right.
state constitution work? How does the federal constitution work? How do they work simultaneously? Which one is, if there was a supremacy to be exercised, would that remain with the states or would it remain with the federal government? So I think I'm gonna have to make a note and see if we can, if you're up for talking about that, because I think that would be one of the greatest conversations for me, because that's been something in all my years of reading the Constitution that there's very little written about.
Yeah. And you want something that's more recent, that is in the news lately, that is really interesting, that in a way I'm glad it works that way. It worked out that way, because I don't know if I would have thought of it that way, in a particular way. And that's with the whole thing. Even the state of Idaho's got to, we can still prosecute Fauci because,
Oh yeah, the feds
because
can't.
the feds can't because of that. My two problems with that is, number one, pardon is only reserved for after the fact,
Right.
meaning you have to be at least charged.
No preemptive pardoning.
Yeah, no preemptive pardoning, because the pardon is after the fact.
Right.
But even if we set that aside, let's say that that is perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Then comes in the question, double jeopardy. When was the person put in jeopardy initially?
Right.
When was Fauci put in a jeopardy of life, limb, or property? That's the determining factor.
Right.
Well, he was never charged with anything, so he's never been put in jeopardy of life, liberty, and property. So if, yeah, feds can't prosecute, yeah, they can, because he's never been put into original jeopardy. So double jeopardy doesn't apply.
Ah,
So he's never been put into jeopardy. So I'd say one, pardon, no, that's not, you can't preemptively pardon, but even if you can, he was never put in jeopardy, so double jeopardy doesn't apply.
unbelievable.
And
Well,
I don't think I would have ever thought of it
I
without that happening.
that's a good thought. Well, I guess we'll tie this up for now. Hopefully we get to do this again. I really appreciate you joining me today, man, and it's great to thank you for being a part of what you're doing, and me being a part of what you're doing, and maybe you being a part of what I'm doing.
It's all for the benefit of everybody, and we can all learn from each other. I mean,
It
I
is,
learned
man.
plenty from Ron as you were doing your videos, and being challenged by him and challenging him. I mean, I think bouncing, one person can't do it all. We can't think of everything, and with everybody brain uh, coming together and brainstorming and whatnot, I think we can do much better, much greater things with all our different expertise and all our different things that we've learned and experienced than if it was just you, Tom.
Amen.
As great as you are,
Oh, thank you.
as great as you are, I
Right
mean,
back at you, brother.
it's much
Well,
better to do it with not being alone to do it.
right on. All right. Well, so finally, in case we have people that are watching these videos, I say that tongue in cheek. Of course, everybody's going to watch them.
Absolutely.
Do you have a website you want to share with everybody?
Sure. Good. It's really easy to remember. michaellawauthor.com. So like an author, Michael Law, author.com. There's, of course, you can get the book there if you want to get it there. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it electronically if you want on Amazon. And then there's plenty of other articles, like a couple that mentioned, with the crisis of 2020, with more recent, what is a conservative, and
Good one.
even plenty of other things that I have talked about and written about,
Right
including
on.
initiatives, for example, here in Idaho, and
Right on.
lots of
Well,
things.
well, do you want to give out your contact information, or should they just contact you from your contact page on your website?
Yeah, they can do that on the website.
Okay.
The got contact information there. Won't have my phone number, but have web address, and you can just send a comment there, and I'll get the email,
Okay.
or
They can always call me too then.
yeah, they can always call you. Uh, yep.
Okay. All right. Cool, man. Well, have a great afternoon. Thanks for the time. I really appreciate it, and I hope people got a good taste of what you're all about, and want to hear more from you. So I appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, man.